Smartphones, they're supposed to make our lives easier, right? But over the years, manufacturers have dropped some features so questionable, you have to wonder, were they trying to help us or just trolling? What's up, guys? Today we're diving into the most useless smartphone features ever made. Some of these sounded genius on paper, but in real life, not so much. Let's get into it. Okay, let's start with the Bixby button. Raise your hand if you've ever actually used Bixby. Anyone? No? Exactly. You'd grab your phone, trying to adjust the volume, and bam, Bixby would pop up, staring at you like, need something? No, Bixby. No, I do not. Eventually, Samsung let us disable it because even they knew we didn't want it. Rest in peace, Bixby button. You were extra, and not in a good way. Next up, Apple's 3D Touch. The idea was cool. Press harder on your screen and you'd unlock hidden features. Fancy, right? But here's the thing. Who was sitting around thinking, you know what this phone needs? A screen that judges how hard I press. Too soft, nothing happens. Too hard? Oops, you just texted your boss instead of your best friend. And let's not even talk about the learning curve. Half the time, you'd forget the feature even existed. Apple eventually phased it out. I guess even they realized we weren't ready to turn our fingers into precision tools. Let's talk about fingerprint scanners on the back of phones. Now, I'm not saying it was a bad idea, but let's just say it wasn't the most practical design choice either. Picture this, you're holding your phone in one hand and you need to unlock it. No problem, right? Except now you have to awkwardly twist your wrist or fumble around with your finger to find the sensor. It wasn't as smooth as it looked in the ads. Sure, it worked fine when you were holding the phone, but what about when it was flat on a table or mounted in your car? Suddenly, it's like the phone was testing your contortionist skills, and you were failing miserably. The struggle was real. Some people got used to it, but honestly, it always felt like you were trying to get the fingerprint scanner to work just by magic. And don't even get me started on the times you'd think you got the right spot and bzz, nope, try again. These days, we've moved on to under-display fingerprint scanners, which makes everything feel a lot more intuitive. Progress, folks. The heart rate monitor. Remember when phones tried to be your personal trainer? Yeah, that didn't last long. I mean, it sounds great. Check your heart rate anytime, anywhere. But here's the thing. How many of us actually used it once, twice, maybe to show your friends, and then it just sat there, forgotten? Let's be honest. If we cared that much about our heart rate, we'd probably own a smartwatch or, I don't know, go for a jog. Cool concept, poor execution. It's no surprise this one quietly disappeared. Now, this one takes me back, the IR blaster. Yeah, the idea was simple. Turn your phone into a universal remote. Control your TV, your AC, maybe even prank your neighbors. Genius, right? Except no one actually used it. Sure, it was fun to try once or twice, but by the time you downloaded the app, set it up, and figured out how it worked, you could have just used the regular remote. It's like someone at HQ said, hey, let's add a feature no one will miss when it's gone. And guess what? They were right. And now let's talk about the most controversial feature removal of all time, the 3.5mm headphone jack. Apple called it courage. The rest of us called it inconvenient. Suddenly you couldn't just plug in your headphones. You needed a dongle. And if you lost that dongle, oh well, guess you're going wireless. Bluetooth headphones are great until they run out of battery mid-call or disconnect at the worst possible moment. But hey, at least it freed up space for, courage? Love it or hate it, the 3.5mm jack is gone and we've all just adapted, mostly. When AR first hit phones, it felt like the future was here. Virtual furniture, AR gaming, holographic directions. It was going to change everything. And then nothing happened. I mean, sure, Pokemon Go was fun, but beyond that, most of us used AR once, said, huh, neat, and never touched it again. Turns out we're not quite ready to live in a holographic world. Or maybe we just like our apps the way they are, simple and straightforward. All right, next up, motion gestures. You know, where you wave your hand over the phone and it's supposed to do something magical. Raise your hand if you've ever actually used this feature more than once. Yeah, thought so. You'd try to change the song or answer a call, but the phone would act like you were trying to summon a genie. It's like it had a mind of its own, and don't even get me started on the air gestures that never worked the way they were supposed to. It felt like the phone wanted to give us superpowers, but only on its own terms. Spoiler alert, we didn't ask for this kind of magic. Who remembers the phone notch? No, not the sleek ones we have now. I'm talking about the massive ones that took up half the screen. It was like a little bite was taken out of your display. At first, manufacturers acted like it was this bold design choice. We had to make room for the front camera and sensors and all that good stuff. Sure, but half the time you couldn't even tell what was in that notch. Was it a speaker? Was it a camera? Was it an alien trying to communicate with us? Some companies still hold on to the notch, but more and more are going for hole punch designs or even under-display cameras. They just couldn't pull it off. It was awkward, it took up screen space, and let's face it, it looked weird. Let's talk about the modular phones. You remember these, right? Phones with removable parts like a camera, battery, or speaker that you could swap out like Lego pieces. Sounds awesome, right? Except it was a total nightmare. The whole point of these phones was supposed to be flexibility, but they ended up being cumbersome and a bit confusing. You'd have to carry around all these extra pieces just to swap out one part. And let's not even mention the cost. If you wanted to upgrade to a better camera module, get ready to spend a small fortune. Cool concept, but it turns out people just wanted a phone that worked out of the box. You know, one piece. Preferably with a decent camera, not 100 pieces of accessories. Flexible displays were supposed to be the future. The idea was that you could fold your phone and carry it around in your pocket, then open it up like a mini tablet. Sounds futuristic, right? But here's the catch. The first few attempts at folding phones were a disaster. The screens were fragile, they creased like an old map, and you could see the weird bend lines when the display was fully extended. Plus, if you bent it too many times, the display started acting like it was on its last legs. So much for the future. More like the we'll try again in 5 years future. Some companies are still trying to make foldable phones work, but honestly, they're still a bit hit or miss. Alright, this one's a fun one. Fake dual cameras. You know the phones that have 2 camera lenses on the back, but only one actually works? Oh yeah, those. Manufacturers thought, let's add 2 lenses to make the phone look like it has a super advanced camera setup. You'd see the extra lens, get all excited, then open the camera app and realize it's a lie. It's not even functional. This was basically the smartphone equivalent of a movie prop. Now, let's talk about the digital well-being tools. Yeah, the ones that are supposed to make us more aware of how much time we spend on our phones. On paper, they sound great. You get reminders when you've been scrolling for too long. You set limits on your apps. Very healthy, right? Except every time it tells you to stop, what do? You ignore it. You snooze the notification. Just 5 more minutes. It's like trying to use a fitness tracker while eating a whole pizza. Sure, you know it's bad for you, but you're still doing it. Pop-up cameras were once the solution to all our notch problems. The idea was simple. Hide the front camera in the phone until you needed it, and then poof, it would pop out like magic. Sounds cool, right? Until you realize that the camera was a fragile little piece of technology that could easily get jammed or broken. Plus, it made the phone extra thick and a little clunky. Oh, and did I mention the awkward sound it made when it popped up? Like it was trying to sneak into a party without being noticed. Yeah, pop-up cameras were a fun experiment, but ultimately the practicality just wasn't there. They're basically extinct now. What's the most useless feature you've ever had on your phone? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Speaking of curious, have you ever wondered why your laptop is overheating? Click here. You will be shocked.